So most of us are wondering what next? Will society transform as a result of the coronavirus? And what will the new normal look like? So, hello, my name's Maitrinara. I'm a ordained member of the Triratna Buddhist Community, and I'm a teacher in the Brixton Buddhist Community. So what we'll be doing tonight is we'll be looking at what the Buddha said about transforming society. So how it's going to look is we're going to, in a moment, salute the shrine in call and response. So salute our highest values in call and response, Buddha, Dharma and the Sangha. And then there'll be a short led meditation just to really arrive and contact how things are just now. And then I'm going to be giving a 20-minute talk exploring the theme, and then there'll be a chance for questions. So if you've been enjoying these streams, just make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Okay, so let's salute the shrine together. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dhammaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Namah, Om Ahum. So yeah, we're going to do a short led meditation on the breath, and what that's going to really do is just get us to relax and start to get into relationship with how things are for us at the moment. So you don't need to do anything special. You can just sit wherever you are, just sit easy in the chair or on the sofa. If you want to sit on a cushion on the floor, that's fine as well. And if you're ready to, just closing the eyes and just starting to get a sense of your body present here in the moment. So what's the energy like in the body just at the moment? So we're just gauging if the energy feels quite buzzy, quite restless, or maybe a little bit sleepy, lethargic, or maybe we're feeling quite relaxed and expansive. So just noticing the sensations of the body and how you are just now. And we're going to just ground ourselves through that contact that we can feel with the floor. So just noticing the sensations of the contact with the floor. And the quality of those sensations. So you may feel that through the soles of the feet, or however you're contacting the ground, and also through the sitting bones and backside. You can feel your weight dropping into the ground, dropping into the chair or the sofa. So just allowing your weight to sink into those areas of contact. And just allowing the legs to soften. Just noticing any holding on in the legs and just letting the legs start to soften and to relax. So we don't need to have it perfectly quiet. We can just allow any sound around us to be there. part of the meditation. So we're grounding ourselves through these areas of contact with the floor or the chair or sofa. And then noticing how we're feeling in the tummy. There may be some holding on in the tummy, some feeling of drawing in through the tummy. So whether you can feel that or not, just starting to encourage that area to soften and to relax. And you may need to do that a couple of times until you get this sense of letting go in the tummy. So the lower body's just grounded, just relaxed, softened. And we can feel the upper body just rising up energetically out of that foundation. You can feel your back, lower back, mid back, and then the upper part of the back where the shoulder blades are as well. And noticing the area of the shoulders. And again, noticing any holding on, any gripping in the shoulders. They feel like they're slightly lifted forward or up. So if we can just start to soften and let go in the area of the shoulders. And also letting the arms relax. Feeling the sensations in the palms of the hands. So the upper body is energized, rising up. Shoulders are relaxed. And just bringing that same awareness up through the neck. Up into the head. Noticing that area around the head, the temples, the forehead, the eyes. Just seeing if we can allow the eyes to drop into a softer focus behind the eyelids. So that the forehead smooths out. We can start to get a sense that the face is resting, letting go any expression around the mouth. And then coming into contact with the breath as it moves in the body. Noticing the in-breath and the out breath, and then the lull in between. And just seeing if you can get this sense of staying energized, but with a relaxed curiosity towards the breath. The sensations of the breath. And you may want to keep yourself engaged by just putting a very quiet count at the end of the breath. So we're going to just breathe in, breathe out, count 1, breathe in, breathe out, count 2. And you can do that up to 10, start back at 1, and just a very quiet count just to keep yourself engaged with the breath. So we're breathing and just putting a quiet count at the end of the breath and just letting everything else settle around the breath. All the whir of thoughts and feelings, sensations. Just letting that all be there. Disenergized but relaxed curiosity towards the breath. And still just staying at ease in the body. Noticing if you're tightening up. Letting that interest in the breath just create ease in the body. Using that quiet count to just keep us engaged with the process of the breath. And just keep letting go of the body. Just keep softening, ease in the body. And whatever's going on is fine. Just keep bringing a gentle, persistent interest and curiosity to the breath, sensations of the breathing. And now we're just going to drop the counting and just feel where the breath is most, where we feel it most vividly in the body. Still staying at ease and softening through the body. We're just going to follow the breath wherever we feel it most vividly. The changing landscape of the breath. And if there's any pleasure associated with the breathing, just allow that to develop. We can't force that, but if there's pleasure there, just allowing that some space. And whatever's going on is fine. Just allow whatever's going on to be there as part of the meditation. Staying in the moment, staying with the breath. Staying with the ease in the body. And don't lose contact with the ground, that groundedness. And now for the last few moments of the meditation, just letting go any effort at all that you're making. And just sitting here with however things are just now. And then bringing yourself back really present, embodied here, sitting on the chair, the cushion or the sofa. Bringing our full quality to bear, full quality awareness. So, what the Buddha said about transforming society. So we've all got our own vantage point, haven't we, that we're living out this time from. And living these conditions out from. So then they're quite different, those vantage points. They can be quite different, but there is a common factor, and the common factor is that we are all affected. So that's really unprecedented, certainly in my lifetime. I was talking to my mother, and she was saying that it's unprecedented in her lifetime that there was a situation that affected everyone on the planet. So I think it's a really good time to ask or question what the principles are on which our society is established. And there's lots of ways that we could get into this. We could look at the political side of things. We could look at the social side of things. But I'm going to look at this, what I think of as this basic worldview, this basic worldview that's underpinning society, which is materialism. So by materialism, I mean this thing to which we all more or less subscribe. So I'm really not talking about just an accumulation of stuff. I'm talking about thinking of ourselves as stuff. Yeah? Thinking of ourselves as a brain and a nervous system, and when that's conditions which cease to support that finish, then it's lights out and that's it. Okay, so this is a basic kind of position that's underpinning materialism. And if we're honest with ourselves, it's something that we all subscribe to some degree or other. So just historically, I'm just going to say a little bit about this emergence of this view. So historically, it was materialism really ushered in by a kind of scientific revolution, wasn't it? The old religion was really not able to stand up to this kind of critical faculty that arose with the scientific method. And rightly so. I mean, in a certain way, there was this criticism of kind of institutional abuse of power within religion, and also kind of blind faith. So science seemed to usher in this kind of golden age of freedom from kind of hypocrisy, and a freedom to live how one wanted to. So so it has undoubtedly had. We're incredibly privileged, most of us, in the conditions that kind of materialism and science has brought us. And what, if anything, has been lost in that transition into that kind of worldview? Well, I'm going to just mention three things. First thing I'm going to mention is that there's what seems to have been lost is that there's something more to life than the daily round. Another thing that seems to have been lost is the importance of ethics, or kind of sensitivity to our fellow person, as more than just a social construct, as an actual spiritual imperative. And third thing I'd like to draw out is that what's been lost is that there's a less chance of a life lived around a central principle or meaning. So what has it left us with in terms of our understanding of the basic purpose of society? Has it left us kind of limited in our understanding of what society is even for? So it's not obvious what to do with that question, isn't it? Because we don't want to hark back to some golden age of religion, when, of course, all the problems that brought with it. And neither do we want to lament this modern age. So we need somehow to come up with a coherent idea, or say something coherent about a new society and what their values would be that would underpin that. So let's have a look at what the Buddha said about transforming society. So the Buddha was a social critic. When you look at the old scriptures, it's very clear that he was very, very outspoken, particularly of the system that he found himself born into in that period, 2,500 years ago in northern India. So there was the caste system. The caste system was established, and it existed at that time. in the same way, in the sense that it exists now, even though it's not a legal position, it's still kind of culturally prevalent in that culture. So what the caste system gives is it gives a position, a social position of God-given right based on birth. And so if you're low caste or high caste, that's dependent on your karma. If you've got good conditions, comfortable conditions, conditions which feel conducive, that's based on your karma. And if you've got deprivation, poverty, and difficulty, well, that's attributed to your karma as well. So as you're born into that, you're born into the caste system, there's no, from a traditional point of view, there's no way to advance. That is, as is your lot. There's no way to advance socially, economically, or spiritually. So the Buddha saw that ordering society in this way was very unhelpful, and it was unhelpful for both the advantaged and for the disadvantaged, because it had no, there was nothing built into it which encouraged a kind of spiritual aspiration. So he really questioned, well, he questioned a lot of things, but a couple of the questions that he posed were, on what basis were the Brahmins are the higher class, what basis are the Brahmins, on what basis did they assert their superiority? And was there indeed a better measure of superiority that one could find of a superior person that could hold value and meaning in the society? So the Buddha sought to subvert and redefine what a Brahmin, what it meant to be a Brahmin or superior person. So what he said was that a Brahmin was someone worthy of respect and influence based on their own spiritual effort. So I'm going to read some lines from the Dhammapada. Dhammapada is one of the oldest parts of the Pali Canon, Buddhist scriptures, and it's words directly attributed to the Buddha. And in it, he assesses what constitutes a real Brahmin. And when he's talking about him, you could just as easily have it as her or gender neutral. So don't worry about that. So here's a few lines from the Dhammapada, the last chapter of the Dhammapada. I do not call him Brahmana who is merely womb-born, sprung from a Brahmin mother. I call him Brahmana by whom no evil is done by the body, by speech or by the mind, or who with regard to these three is restrained. I call him Brahmana who is absorbed in higher meditative states, who is unstained by passion, whose task is done, who is free of the defilements, who has reached the ultimate goal. I call him Brahmana who is conciliatory amongst the antagonistic, peaceful amongst those that have recourse to violence, and who is unattached among the attached. I call him Brahmana with whom lust, hatred, pride, and hypocrisy have fallen away like a mustard seed from the point of an awl. I call him Brahmana, who would utter gentle, instructive, true speech by which one would give no offence to no one. I call him Brahmana, who takes in this world nothing that is not given to him, be it long or short, small or great, pleasant or unpleasant. I call him Brahmana, who through perfect knowledge is freed from doubts and who has achieved the plunge into the deathless. I call him Brahmana, who is foremost amongst men. So, yeah, you can see that the Buddha is here, he's redefining Brahman as someone who works on the actions of their body, speech and mind through ethics and reflection, and lives a life that's conducive to the well-being of all beings. And it's not just conducive to their local, the immediate family or political religious group to which they belong. So the caste system, yeah, as I say, was established in India and it re-established itself strongly as Buddhism died out for various reasons. And it wasn't until the mid-20th century that the great Dr. Ambedkar, through his what can only be described as kind of tireless and heroic work and attitude, sought to redress this. So if you don't know who he is, Dr. Ambedkar is the leader of the ex-untouchables, or the lowest of the caste in India. And what he did was he worked his way into government and became a highly respected Minister of Law. In fact, he drafted the Indian constitution. And he drafted a constitution because he wanted to enshrine legal rights of equality amongst the castes. And although he was successful in drafting that constitution, he realised that after some time that it wasn't enough to just enshrine those rights legally. People's hearts and minds had to change. And he, after some consideration, made a mass conversion of the Dalits, or ex-untouchables, to Buddhism. So how do our minds need to change to affect social change? And who in this modern age that we find ourselves are the modern day Brahmins? Well, how can we question the material beliefs which underpin the status? So I'm going to postulate that the modern day Brahmins are the young professionals. They're the young professionals. They're the so-called yummy mummies. They're the pop stars. They're the sports stars. They're the entertainment stars. They're the businessmen, even the family men. That kind of men and women who really form the kind of higher kind of status of our society, what people aspire to. So I'm going to talk a little bit and zoom in a little bit on the young professionals, and I'm going to do that because I've got a little bit of kind of previous, so to speak. I've got some. I used to be a card-carrying member, a young professional, and I was fully engaged with all the kind of youth and energy, confidence and financial means that brought. In fact, that's in a certain ways that's the marketing man's really holy grail, isn't it? And it's the marketing man's holy grail because here you've got holidays, you've got dynamic relationships, you've got financial means, you've got curated flats, you've got the latest tech, and there's status and a sense of freedom in all of that, or it's certainly ascribed a sense of freedom. But what have we loaded onto these young professionals? And I mean, before I talk a bit more about myself, I'm going to just mention a friend of mine's brother who's, my friend was saying that he really, well, face it, has it also. There's the well-paid job, there's the drinks after work, there's the squash, the friends, the leisure time. And he really, this brother of my friend really surprised him when he said, but I really don't know if I'm happy. I really know what he meant. I really know what he meant because I've had that same crisis of meaning in my own life, that kind of nagging feeling that there is more to life, but I don't know where to find it. It's a kind of pernicious doubt that really kind of pushed me into more internet dating, more working harder, even working less, a gym, self-help books, and eventually, when all else failed, Buddhism. So yeah, looking back, I think that the main thing that was missing was a real moral compass which would tune me into the life within myself and the life within others. And as it became clearer to me, as it became clearer to me that the mind was what mediated my experience, I needed tools to work on my mind, methods to work on my mind. So I think we can question our modern day Brahmins, these carriers of meaning and value. And in the same way, the Buddha questioned the assumptions in his day about what would really bring happiness. So all the same things in a way that he questioned. He questioned wealth, would that bring happiness, status, acquisition, popularity, even relationships, all came under the scrutiny of the Buddha as external factors in our life which can't be relied on to necessarily bring us a satisfaction and a lasting kind of happiness. So it's interesting, isn't it, as we've all been kept home by the coronavirus, and a lot of our external props have been removed, we've been left with ourselves, haven't we? We've been left with ourselves and our close relationships and connections. And we've been left with how we respond to experience. And we've been left with the choices that we've made and the things that we've chosen to pursue. So yeah, the Buddha said that you can take the energy we drive into these external factors, and you can direct that towards pursuit of what will really satisfy you. So he identified avenues of meaning which weren't available in the old caste system, in the same way they're not available in modern materialist assumptions. So so how does that actually relate to transforming society, which was the title of the talk after all? So what the Buddha said very clearly and on numerous occasions was that it was greed, hatred and delusion which is really driving unhappiness in ourselves, and this obsessive desire towards acquisition, which fuels inequality in our society. So he was clear: you can't transform society without transforming yourself. And it's very, very important. He found it very important that we harness our emotional life. And this emotional life, this emotional life of ours, is so often kind of suppressed, squashed, or distracted, or we're distracted from it by modern living. So we can harness that emotional life to a vision of what we ourselves can become, and then importantly, what we can then contribute to society. So if our lives are throwing up dissatisfaction, in a way that's good. In a way that's good, because we might be sensing from that there might be more to life than this daily round that we've been living through. We may start to sense that our ethical life is more fundamentally important than than just its social repercussions. And we might start to sense that life needs some sort of central quest or principle to elicit meaning, something of which to inform our lives. So yes, the Buddha said that society would transform if enough people were positively dissatisfied, if enough of those people were to really work on their hearts and minds, and if those people were then to organise within communities that wanted to do the same thing. And if those communities that then were really actively were to affect change in whatever sphere of life they contacted. So I'm really interested to hear what you have to say out there. I'm hoping that some questions are forming. So I'm going to open up to questions shortly. So please just start typing away in the chat box, and we'll have a chance to get at those questions in a short while. So while you're thinking about that, I'm just going to give a brief summary. So yeah, in summary, this society that we're living in has really been shaken up by the coronavirus, and when the conditions settle back down into whatever way, in whatever different financial and kind of social environment that happens, um, will our conditions or our impetus to change settle down with it, or will we act on the kind of limitations that we've maybe glimpse in ourselves and in society and affect a change? So yeah, I'm going to take questions in a moment, and there's also going to be a Zoom call with links in the chat box and below in the description, and that will be happening 8:45, so we can follow up on anything live that comes out of the questions or indeed from the talk. If you don't get a chance to ask a question, you could ask it then. So yeah, just while you're thinking out some questions, I'm going to make a couple of short announcements of things that's coming up in our Buddhist community, Brixton Buddhist Community. We're always trying to innovate and create new ways for people to engage with their hearts and minds and affect the changes that we've been talking about. And one of the really good ways to do that is to do a course. And normally, of course, we do them physically in Effra Space and Yoga Point, where we run our courses. But now, of course, they're all going to be online. And the next one that's coming up is called Mindful Emotion. It's going to be an 8-week course starting on Tuesday, 21st of March. And it's going to really show kind of and explore innovative ways to work on our positive emotion in whatever situations we find ourselves. And it'll be a chance to build week on week, and there'll be activities to engage you through the week as well, so that you can really test out that material in your actual life. So I really recommend that. It's going to be run by Cyber Sealer and Matt, and that's starting on Tuesday 21st of March. You need to book online on our website for that. So one other thing I'm going to say before we turn to questions is that, as I said, we're really looking at ways to innovate with Brixton Buddhist Community, ways to work on our heart and mind. And we've been putting out these live streams. We've been running Zoom interactive forums. We've been running our study groups as normal. All sorts of things going on. But the difference between now and a month ago is that there's no physical, we don't have any physical income. All the money we used to take in through the courses and classes and retreats that we're running, we're not getting anymore. But we still have running costs. And running costs, they're basically the people that are running the activities. So we worked out we need £2,000 with which to function, and we've put together this Dharmapada, which is here, magically appeared, and we've been doing really well on the Dharmapada based on the generosity of people in the community and people that have been engaging with the streams. So we're actually halfway there. So we're halfway there. We've got this 1,114 pounds this month so far, on our way to the £2,000 goal. So you could really help us by supporting us by setting up a standing order or one-off donation, and all the links to that are in the description below. So thanks for thinking about that. Okay, so now we've got a chance to move over into questions. Is there any? We've got any questions here?
Yes, we've got a couple of questions. First question from Cheryl. She says, "How do we know when we've worked on our hearts and minds enough that we are ready to come together and bring about societal change?"
When have we worked on our hearts and minds enough?
When do we know when we've worked on our...
When do we know?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think, Cheryl, hi Cheryl, first of all, I don't think we do know when it's enough. I don't know that we, if there is a kind of moment that's enough. I think that what's happening is the things that is happening concurrently in a way. So working on our hearts and minds is not a solitary occupation. It's something which we involves strongly involves our interactions with other people, how we engage with other people, and so on. Yeah? So we can't kind of work on our hearts and minds in a way in isolation. So in a way, you could say that as soon as you're starting to engage with this process of working on your heart and mind, this clarity and positive emotion, you're starting to affect the immediate sphere or the people around you, the sphere of influence. So in a way, it's not as if I think that we are either working on society or to affect change, or we're working on our hearts and minds. The two things seem to kind of be happening concurrently. So I hope that helps, Cheryl. Do write again if that's hasn't satisfied you. Okay, have you got anything
Yeah,
else?
Brunaldo asks, how might we hold positive dissatisfaction without getting into indifference or depression?
So positive dissatisfaction, by that, what I'm referring to is, as I was talking in the talk just now, what I was saying during was basically it's this kind of sense that things are not quite enough, yeah? That they're not quite enough. What the Buddha talked about that as the ill-fitting wheel. So that sense that life is just a slightly bumpy ride, and sometimes it's a lot more than a slightly bumpy ride, isn't it? Sometimes it really throws you about all over the place. So the dissatisfaction seems to, even when things are going well, there may be, if we really notice in our experience, there may be this sense that this won't last, or this isn't, how do I keep this going, or this still isn't quite right. Yeah? And if we start to, as we start to notice that in our spirits, we start to we can start to use it as a way of kind of galvanizing us. Yeah? So what the Buddha was saying is that really comes about, that dissatisfaction, because of a basic kind of selfishness, a basic kind of constriction in our being, a basic constriction and separateness, that we keep ourselves kind of isolated, fixed and separate from other beings. And it's that which really kind of bothers us in a way, on a deep kind of existential level. Of course, life can really impinge, and that's of course you can get a really rocky ride from external factors as well. There's no doubt about that. But there's just this way: how do we respond to that? So the question was, how do we notice that dissatisfaction in ourselves without kind of letting it demotivate us, or fall into depression, or what was the other one? I think it was anxiety, fall into depression, anxiety. Well, I think it's as I said, it's really, how do we use that to kind of galvanize us? How do we use that to bring ourselves into more meaningful connection with other people, more meaningful connection with ourselves, and use that dissatisfaction to kind of spur this impetus to change, rather than let it kind of dissuade us or kind of flatten us out. And I just thought it's quite interesting. The kind of panic buying was quite an interesting phenomenon, I thought, because I wasn't immune to it either. I had that same urge. I live here in community with 4 other Buddhists, and at some point I was saying maybe we should put another order in, 3 weeks down the line, so that we've got that lined up. And thankfully I was dissuaded that we didn't need to do that. It would be fine if we didn't do that. But I did notice that the impulse for that was a kind of tightening up, or a closing in on my my own immediate needs, yeah, without considering anything else. And that always has a certain feeling. It has a feeling of kind of pulling in, a kind of drawing in, a tightening up. Yeah. So, and opposed to that, when we started to make decisions to only shop for what we needed, although it kind of built in, there was a little bit of uncertainty at part of that decision. It also created a kind of liveliness and a kind of openness and a tendency towards considering others. So I noticed that as a kind of enlarging sense, a sense of expansion. So I think there's some kind of clues in there in the way we act as to how we're using uncertainty or dissatisfaction, how we're using it, whether we're using it to open up or to close down around it. So hope that helped, Vunaga. We've got any?
Yeah, we've got a couple more questions. Question from Sivana Tara. She said, "Are we aware of what is happening right now?" And then she says, "Is our mind able to perceive, well, the evil of a psychopath mind? But I think the evil. I think she means the evil of greed, hatred, and delusion."
So okay, thanks for that question. So as I understand it, can we recognise in our own immediate experience greed, hatred and delusion? Are we kind of cognizant of that? And I would suggest that yes, we are. We're not always, because we can so easily lose the run of ourselves, can't we? So easily act out on those impulses, yeah, even very kind of habitual impulses, and we can be quite far down that route before we kind of catch ourselves, even if we do catch ourselves. So, so in answer to your question, the possibility is there to be cognizant of greed, hatred, delusion in our actual experience, but how easily we catch that depends on a whole host of factors. Depends on our basic kind of mindfulness, how aware we are of our bodily state. For example, we did a little meditation there earlier. You start to notice if you're holding tension, if you're physically relaxed, you start to get a feeling of your actual experience. The whir of thoughts and emotions, you start to get a little bit clearer of what's happening there. So mindfulness is a basic factor. And then the extent to which we're emotionally kind of buoyant and positive through engaging regularly in good, meaningful communication with friends, in acting out on impulses of generosity and so forth. That kind of encourages a kind of natural buoyancy, natural positivity. And of course, when we're in that, that's part of our experience, it's much easier to be sensitive to those factors which are going to close us down into, narrow us down into kind of greed, or grasping, acquisitive tendencies, or that sense of othering other people. We start to notice maybe when we're on a walk and that kind of, there's that physical distancing, but are we also kind of emotionally distancing from people? So we can start to notice that, and if we're more emotionally positive, we can start to work with that so that we don't emotionally distance ourselves from people. So I think these factors of our hearts and minds really have a strong bearing on our ability to notice those strong ingrained threads of greed, of acquisitiveness, of hatred, of othering other people, and delusion, which in this case refers to delusion that well, that I am a fixed and separate self, that I can kind of go about my business kind of quite independently from other beings. And I just really think that, if anything, this situation with the coronavirus has really showed that that's the kind of nonsense of that as a view, and how entirely related we are even as a kind of global community in a way that I've never in my lifetime seen. So yeah, I hope that helps to answer your questions. And yeah, so did you say there's another one?
Yeah, we've got
Maybe
one last question from
one.
Amaladano.
Oh yeah.
He asks, is the great appreciation voiced for the NHS a sign of a society ready for transformation?
It's great, isn't it? The the 8 o'clock clap on the Thursday night. It's just fantastic, isn't it? It's just grown and grown over the last few weeks, we run a study group on a Thursday night, online study group, and we just break at 8 o'clock, and everyone just goes and stands by the door or by their window and claps and bangs, you know, what they've got to hand. And it's just really raised, isn't it, over the last weeks, and really took the public imagination, I think, that there are these people really working on the front line. No matter what our experience is, there's a real pressure and a danger as well working on the front line there. And this NHS that we kind of that we should cherish anyway, I think has become, you know, come to the fore. Much maligned NHS has really come to the fore as a public service, really worthy of a kind of a modern society. Now, of course, it could be better equipped and so on, and I think that it should be better equipped. And I'm hoping that as a result of the situation, the coronavirus situation, public funding for institutions that really matter at a time of crisis really get pushed through, and people, you know, really prioritise that. Whether it's a sign that as a society ready for change is quite another thing. As I said at the end of the talk, I think the jury's out as to what will happen as we return to a new normal, whatever that be, in a new set of financial and social conditions. Whether the best analogy I was given is by a friend of mine, Jack, who's talked about us being like sediment in a river, and we've all been stirred up. We've been stirred up, so this sediment has been stirred up, and but what it needs for it to move is a strong force that's going to move it along. It's not enough to just stir it up. It needs a strong force that's going to move it along. And he attributed meditation to the Dharma to be that strong force, that force that really works on our minds and uses this unsettled conditions to actually really move us along. Whether we're, as a society ready to be unsettled and really move along remains to be seen, doesn't it? But of course there are lots of positive glimpses of that, and I think people have had positive glimpses throughout this time in whatever situation they found themselves. Lots of people have been saying to me that they've had positive glimpses of well, what they might have been missing in their lives, and also in a way the kind of a positive sense of their own limitations of themselves and limitations of their life. So there's been this kind of positive recognition of that, and also glimpses of something really beyond that. So yeah, so we'll just have to all collectively see, won't we, under the Dharma. Okay, so I think that's we're going to leave it there. So thanks for all your questions. Thanks for coming on to the live stream with Brixton Buddhist Community. And if you're moved by any of the streams, live streams, other activities we're doing, do subscribe to our YouTube channel, and do give, as I said in the links below, help sponsor us to reach more and more people. So for now, I'm going to wish you good night, and with any luck, I'll see as many of you as possible on the Zoom, which is going to start at 8:45, and the links for that are in the chat box and in the description. Okay, good night, God bless.